like I was saying, Final Fantasy was one of those, was the game that really got me to kind of person I am today. And in terms of gaming. And I've been watching a whole bunch of news lately, especially after December Games Fest, which I didn't actually watch. But I did get enough coverage of it, especially since they did the official announcement of Final Fantasy Revelations. Final Fantasy VII Revelations, which is the third installment in the Remake series. And I've been... While reading the news, I did notice a whole bunch of, I guess what to call gloating by the players who are, I feel, overly supportive of the game, almost toxically so, saying that us critics basically are rubbing in our face that because Hamaguchi, I believe that's how you say it, or Hamaguchi, is saying that sales are really good for Remake and Rebirth, the two previous entries in the Remake Trilogy. And I have to say that here's a couple things. First of all, Hamaguchi just said that sales are going better than expected. What does that exactly mean? He gave no numbers. Now, also in the article, he did say that for some reason, under, I guess, obligation to the shareholder or something, there's some rule that he's not allowed to discuss exact numbers. Here's the thing. Square Enix, even if they don't quite technically talk about the actual numbers of their sales, they have no problem releasing announcements as well as like some kind of picture or art saying thank you when they reach a certain sales milestone. This happened for Octopath Travelers, Bravely Default, and I'm pretty sure that this definitely happened like at the 5 million mark. I believe that they did, if I remember which game actually sold like 5 million. But they had no problem doing that. And Rebirth got those kind of sales. They would have 100% made a similar announcement, especially with a game series that's so controversial at this time. They would love to stick it to the critics and the haters. Are you kidding me? They would tell us that being able to do that would make us eat crow and basically show that, yeah, we were actually in the minority, when in most cases a lot of games that get critiqued heavily by people would call quote unquote the chuds, or I guess boomer gamers, or whatever how you want to call it. Yeah, no, they would want to put us in our place, because if they're able to make those kind of announcements, it looks really good for the company, therefore it looks good for the shareholders. It increases trust in the company, gets more money, more sales. So why wouldn't they do that? Of course, the sales of the previous games would go up, because guess what? The third and final installment of the series has just been announced. That's the natural course of gaming. When a new game is announced, especially the final of the trilogy, yes, the previous games are going to sell, because people are going to want to get this full story before the final part of the game. I'd like to make mention, when were these games being sold? Okay, I know the article says like even before Summerfest, but I believe that people already knew that Revelations was going to be announced. At least the third game. I don't think we knew the exact name of it yet. But there was also a big sale, the summer sale. So when people start saying like, "Oh, look at that, we got huge sales during the summer." During the summer, yes, there's huge discounts. The discount for Final Fantasy Remake was ridiculous. It was 65%, I believe, like $20, and that included integrated the DLC. And then Rebirth was only slightly more than that. Both games, Rebirth and Remake, along with the integrated DLC, for under $35. It's like $31.99, I believe, if I remember correctly. Who wouldn't buy that? Of course, that's going to increase your sales. Of course, anything would be pretty much better than expected. Of course, they would announce that. But then again, what metric is better than expected? What does that exactly mean? We don't know what that means. That could literally be one more than what they expected. They could technically say, oh yeah, it was better than expected. Now, if they release the numbers and it's actual legit numbers, not something they just pulled out of their ass, okay, then I'll happily eat crow. I'm pretty sure a lot of us who critique the game because we love it and who actually have integrity will, in fact, we say, yeah, you know what? We were wrong about the sales. I guess it was more popular than we thought. Doesn't change our feelings, doesn't change our critiques. My In Memoria series, I'm playing the original FF7, and one of the things I want to do is after the original FF7 is play the remakes, not only to compare with a fresh playthrough of the original FF7 in my head, but because the final trilogy, or the final entry to the trilogy is coming. Okay? And that's one of the only reasons I was actually going to buy it is because I am streaming. Well, Hamaguchi came out talking about the ending. And I cannot believe what I read. Okay? He was saying that the ending could be pretty faithful to the original, could be completely different. Might be slight changes, might be a whole bunch of changes. Who knows? And that got me saying, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean? Wait, what do you mean that the ending could be either the same or different? You literally told us nothing, first off. And that just tells me, like, you did something to the ending. And he's saying that, oh, he wants the ending to make us feel glad that we played the game. Well, newsflash. A lot of us critics already aren't too glad that we already played it. So what exactly are you going to do? Okay? How is it that you're going to make us feel like, oh, we were actually so glad despite all the flaws of the game that, yeah, we would love to play it? You've already screwed up one of the biggest scenes and most like quintessential scenes of the game in Rebirth was Aerith's death scene. Perhaps one of the most famous scenes of all of gaming history that even those who have never played FF7 know about. Okay? You screwed that up with the multi-dimensional bullcrap. And I only gave it like the tiniest bit of faith is because I remember previous interviews when they kind of discussed the slight backlash from Remake having to do with the fate ghosts and all the changes they made. And it's like, oh, going forward from Rebirth, that we're going to be a little bit more faithful to the story. And well, guess what? Spoiler alert, in Rebirth, you really weren't. Yeah, you kind of hit the same beats, but the way you went around it is ridiculous and so long-winded and changes that didn't need to be made. It already has a very established ending, an established story, established beats and how to do it. Now, I know that you've differed it, but you can still, go to the actual, ending that people know and people have discussed to this day. I mean, there's interpretations to the original Final Fantasy VII ending to this day. It says he wants to tie all of the other games, that is like Dirge of Cerberus, Crisis Core, Before Crisis, even Advent Children, he wants to tie it more to the world, basically make it like for sure canon, like yes, it's gonna happen. And then makes you think, okay, so the original FF7 OG, I'm about to die here, was stood on its own. Everything else was extra. Give a little more explanation about the characters from that led up to the OG, as well as possibilities of what's comes after. Now you're going to make those canon, and that what we believe is that this new Final Fantasy is the OG was kind of like a vision given to Aerith from Remake. I'm sorry, but it feels like what you're going to do is you're making the OG just be a fever dream, and then the remake be more of the main timeline. because then that main timeline is actually going to give way and make mention to the other games in the series. So then that makes them all on one timeline, and then that basically also means like OG never happened. So you made basically OG not canon in a sense, in that way. Now I know that's not how it is, and that's just me theorizing, but yeah, no, if you make the remake timeline actually connect to the other stories from the other games, then the entire compilation bases off of the remake timeline, and then the timeline of the OG is basically, yeah, just basically a fever dream. It's just one random vision and possibility that Aerith saw from remake, which we suspected. That's why we think the remakes trilogy is actually a sequel. Discuss what Yoshi P also said going in there. They were talking about how if FF8 and FF9 and FF6 were actually remade, that the games would be 4 to 5 discs big, basically. Now, at least they're consistent with the argument those who are like, oh, of course, FF7 remade had to be remade with 3 games because there's 3 discs. No. You know what would have helped it not be 3 discs? All the extra bullcrap that didn't need to be in there. Now, that doesn't say that some of the extra stuff wasn't good. In fact, a lot of people say, the heavier critics said, the expansions to the story, the locations and the characters were good if they were serviceable to the original entry. They simply expanded upon that story. That it made sense. A lot of it didn't. In fact, the entire Fate Ghost, the multiple timelines, no, that's something that just didn't need to be done. You didn't need to bring back Zack. You didn't need to do any of that. Like, there's no reason to have that many discs. I know that FF8 and FF9 were originally 4 discs. Doesn't mean the remakes would need to be. And FF6, are you kidding me? That was 1 game on the 1 Super Nintendo cartridge. In what world would you need to have that to be 4 to 5 discs? I know the world could be big, but come on now. Literally just do the most minimum changes besides graphics and voice acting. Maybe do a little bit expansion, but you know, not with the modern storage devices. Are you kidding me? Come on now. None of the games need to be remade anyways. I'm sorry, but FF9 stands on its own just fine. Sure, I would love a little more expansion to Freya's, to Freya's storyline. I would have loved that. But with how Square Enix treated FF7 remake, why would I want them to? That's insane. The only one from the PS1 era I could think of, or pretty much almost any of the eras, is FF8. Could use a remake, I guess, because it's so convoluted. After the first disc, the story just kind of goes off the rails a little bit. Talking about also basically all the main characters were children in the same orphanage, and the only reason they forgot was because of the Guardian Forces. That's a little far out there. It's a little hard to suspend my disbelief. I just don't trust Square Enix to make any remakes, and remakes can work. Look at Resident Evils 1 for the GameCube, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4. Those remakes were fantastic. And the changes they were made, even though some of them I didn't agree with, were still fine. They never took anything truly away. Now, Resident Evil 3's remake, oh, that took a lot away. That was screwed up. And you know what? Don't need to play that. You know, if you remake anything, remake Legend of Dragoon, freaking Legend of Gaia, freaking Xenogears. Let's do that, you know? But not by you, Square. You stay away that. You stay the hell away from it. And why the hell are we even listening to Yoshi P about this? Like, he did great things for 14 back in the day. I think he needs to retire now as someone who, with like fresh ideas and understanding of the previous expansions and what made those stories work, and have a consistent good team. Like you had one, the Shadowbringers, even Endwalker was pretty good, Heaven's Word was pretty good, Stormblood was good. GP, bro, you need to retire. You did good things. Like, you should have went out on top, and now, dude, the opinion of you these days are just not that great. So let's not listen about Yoshi P. I mean, I know he did 16, but especially why we listened to him when he did 16. 16, I actually never played because I don't trust Square anymore. Like, I have no reason to give them any more money than I would really need to, if at all. And what I heard, 16, from what I heard from people who I trust in gaming, says in the beginning it was good. It had a great start. But it quickly became a pacing problem and was just too long in the tooth later on. And became very, people said, like MMO-like. A lot of like fetch quests and things. It's hard. Now, to be fair, in some of the comments on some of the videos that were discussing this as well, that in the article, Yoshi P was talking about the reason why there shouldn't be remakes. And you know what, Yoshi, if that's what you were talking about when you made those statements, then absolutely. Square should not remake those games. Let someone else handle it if you need to. Figure out a way to make it on one freaking disc, one freaking game. Or if you need to have one game but multiple discs, sure. And we have to install it, fine, I'd do that. You know, Yoshi was talking about how Yamaguchi should direct FF17. People were like craving for him to actually work on 17, to be director of 17. Why would we want him to touch it? Why? Now, if he was in charge of the battles, the battle system for it, maybe sure. I mean, I personally would have preferred FF7 Remake to be turn-based, but I mean, the action was still fun. The action and combat was still fun. I enjoyed it. I mean, it's one of those things that I'm not heavily critical on. In fact, you know what's funny? I think that if the Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy actually was not about Final Fantasy VII, they still took the same games, but made its own original IP, original characters, original setting, it wouldn't have as much controversy as it does today. I think the game would have done a hell of a lot better. Now, in the beginning, it wouldn't have as much sales because would be a brand new IP, but I think it would gave a lot more trust to Square that they could still make really good IP. If they just made those games just not about Final Fantasy VII, because you put an expectation and you use the word remake, so you would have avoided all of this nonsense, all this controversy, this hate, this critiques. If you just made it not about Final Fantasy VII, you would probably sold a hell of a lot more, and there wouldn't be so much trepidation about the third game. Now, it kind of sucks that, yeah, there still would have been 3 games for one story, and I played Pokemon, and I'm actually a huge fan of the Dot Hack series. I'm not a stranger to companies breaking down a story into multiple games, which, let's be real, the only reason they did it, the only reason they split the Final Fantasy VII Remake really is for money, to get extra money. For one storyline, you're basically playing, if you do the old $60 game per new game thought process on it, it's $180 for one story, versus it would have been the $60 you usually would have paid for an RPG of that size. I mean, you're messing with the game that meant a tons to so many freaking people, that literally defined the gamers that they are today. And yeah, no, it was just not a good move. And let's discuss what people talk about when critiquing remake. Like, oh, it's a remake, what do you think was going to be happen? What's the definition of remake? Like the literal child definition? To make again from the ground up. Okay, guess what? Final Fantasy VII Remake, if they literally made it look, yeah, they literally made it look the same, but they literally remade the game, programming from the ground up, all new assets, but the assets look very similar to the old ones. Still a remake. Probably call it a remaster because probably the graphics would be a little higher fidelity. Now, if you did say, not necessarily 1-to-1, but expansions like in, say, Remake, where they expanded the storylines to Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, I don't want to hear that, oh, it was called a remake. What do you think was going to happen? What I wanted was a very close game to the original, but with modern day graphics. And for those of you who say like, oh, what was the point of if it being so close to the original? We wouldn't buy it. I'm like, no, yes you would. Who are you trying to fool? You're trying a modern day graphics, fully voice acted with slightly expansion story to one of the biggest RPGs of all time that made Square Enix a titan as that is today in the RPG genre. You would have 100% would have bought it. Don't kid yourself. For those who haven't played the original, yeah, they would have gotten an experience so much closer and could have been improved to the original. You could have said that it could have actually replaced as a definitive addition to the original for their storyline, rather than no, the OG is the definitive edition. This is just a sequel. The fact that you're defending it so hard is just because you just want a battle. You want to quote unquote own the Chads. No, sorry. I don't buy it. All right. Freaking so sick and tired. I'm so sick and tired of this freaking discourse. I'm gonna be honest with you. Just want a freaking modern day freaking remake of one of the most cherished games of all time. No, not to say that Remake and Rebirth didn't have good things about them, but could have been better. And also, let's tackle the argument real quick about this saying like, oh no, the original still exists. Yeah. Pure technicality, yes, it does exist. Would still exist no matter what. However, let's see how when you release a newer version of the game, okay, what actually happens. Okay, yes, it is not the original. The original does exist. However, those graphics are really outdated. Still have their charm, but they're really outdated. So most modern gamers, okay, will not touch it because of that. And how I'm not just pulling that out of my ass, because people have said so. But they didn't touch the original FF7 because the graphics were so old. Now, if you even played the remakes of the original, what most people come to mind will be the most recent entries, when those will be remakes. So when you just start discussing FF7, they're going to think about the remakes first. It's going to de facto replace the original in a lot of people's minds, just for the simple fact that it is newer, and it did have a lot of story beats, and not the 95% way that most people are saying, like, oh, it's not. No, it wasn't. Come on now, get that out of here. Play the damn game, and you know for a fact that it's just not true. All those of us who understand and truly appreciate the story are like, no, FF7 is the original.